we focus again on a matter that borders on sexual harassment. And I'm sure that if you have been following the news, you would know that we are in a period where we are engaged in this hashtag 16 Days of Activism. And this year, the theme happens to be on ending violence at workplaces, and we will be looking at these issues in detail from different angles. From the angle of labor, persons who are in charge of workers and oversee the interests of workers. To what extent are workers harassed by co-workers, by employers, and perhaps even other persons who are not directly related to the work they are doing? Again, beyond the workplace, for example, women in the media, how are they affected by sexual harassment? And then students, especially female students, in recent times we've had to have conversations that had to do with sex for grades. The BBC came into the picture. It became a conversation, not just in this country, but also across Africa, Ghana and Nigeria. That kind of topic made headlines and so on. How do we end all of these things going on? And I have been joined in the studio, not by one person, but by about 10 persons who will all be sharing with us, if we have the time, their experiences relative to sexual harassment, and also we'll be taking some views from them as to how we can all help to end this menace, a menace that has gotten many girls especially to stop schooling, to resign from their workplaces, denied access to work simply because they refused to offer sex in exchange for jobs and so on and so forth. I have been joined in the studio by Bashiratu Kamal. She is a gender and labor specialist with the General Agriculture Workers Union. She joins me in the studio. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excited to have you. I will be joined in the studio on this desk by a lady who is the Women's Commissioner at the University Students Association, University of Ghana. She is Amtu Ameya Ekumfi. She will join us pretty shortly. But again, we will go over to Zoom later on the program to speak to Shamima Muslim. Shamima is the convener of the Alliance for Women in Media Africa. But more importantly for me, we have a group of young women who have stories to share. They have also joined me in the studio. Shall we turn our cameras so our viewers see these young women? And I need you to give me yourselves a big round of applause for being brave enough to come out to speak against this menace. We are very excited that you found time to join us here again. And so this is our contribution to the fight against sexual harassment. And I've had already a few men talking about the fact that indeed, when we sent out the promo that we're going to have this show, some of you said, why only women? Why is it that only women are having this conversation? Because men are also sexually harassed. I think I agree. We'll come to that later on the show. Bashiratu, once again, thank you so much. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you for having us in this very important moment.
So quickly, let's go straight to business. 16 days of activism. And this year, your focus is on what?
Ending violence and harassment in the workplace. This is actually the 30th year since the commemoration of that day began. So it starts from 25th of November all the way to the International Human Rights Day, which is the 10th of December. That is why it's 16 solid days that we use to commemorate that day with different activities, advocacy, in-person activities, sensitization and other, calling on government to certain actions and civil society, media houses and everybody on the role that they also need to play towards ending the menace.
And forgive me, but I want to start from the angle of the interest of men who are wondering why, when it comes to conversations about sexual harassment, it is only women who we portray as the victims, and that men also have been harassed several times by women?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of factors that account for that. One, men come from a place of privilege. You know, they are in a place of, they are in a privileged position. So they already have all the systems and the structures that are protecting them. And also, in terms of prevalence, when we talk about the prevalence rate, it is women and girls who are in the majority. Very few men have also been able to report cases. So it's just like discussing domestic violence case. And when you go to DOVSU, the data are available and how many men are in there, you know. And also from time immemorial, women have always been the ones who are oppressed. Women have always been the ones who are suppressed. Women have always been the takers of violence and any form of harassment that comes along. So, and women have not had a voice around these issues for a very long time. So I'm not sure that, we don't say that men are not victims. Men can be victims. We have men who are also survivors. And when we talk about the issues around violence and harassment, we don't limit it to man against woman. It can be man against man, because in the workplace we have male bosses who work with male subordinates. It can be woman against woman. It can also be man against woman or woman against man. But our interest is about the prevalence rate, who is more at the receiving end, and about the powers within our society. Men are also the ones who are in positions of power. So when these issues also deals with power, on equal power relations, and so the majority in position are the ones who are mostly perpetuating it against people they work with.
So again, on the issue of violence, before the show, there were those who got in touch with me. In fact, we had a discussion before this discussion, and it was an all-male discussion, sort of. That when we talk about violence as well, and we sort of segregate violence and make one part gender-based and then the rest. Violence is violence, whether it's gender-based or whether it's child-based or adult-based, whatever it is. Why are we not talking about ending violence in general, but being selective about gender-based violence to start with?
Well, the theme in itself is not gender-based. The theme is ending violence and harassment in the workplace. So the theme itself does not discriminate or segregate. But the issue is that when we talk about gender-based violence, it is that type that is perpetuated against a person because of the person's gender. And you know, each gender comes with, like I mentioned earlier, some level of power and privilege. So people with certain powers and people with certain privileges perpetuate some kind of violence or harassment or assault or battery against others because they do not have that type of power, you know, and protection against themselves. So, and then it's important, I mean, in every issue, gender is not a standalone issue. Gender is in everything that we discuss, even in the studio setup, in the machines and everything. There's a gender dimension to it. And it's important for us to have gender-based discussions, because that is when we know whether policies and legislations and systems and structures are actually working for everybody in society. Because if you leave it generally, you would think that everything is perfect. But when you bring the gendered aspect of it, you are better able to know how are minority groups affected, how are women with disabilities affected differently, how are women generally affected, how are single mothers affected, how are women without jobs, how are women who are looking for jobs affected, you know, because we also have different intersecting identity. That also contributes to how people treat you when it comes to issues around violence and harassment.
So let's get to the workplace, and you are a labor specialist. Within our context here in Ghana, what are the forms of violence, to start with, but specifically also sexual harassment cases that have been recorded, perhaps in your office, on the table that you sit, at workplaces?
Well, I mean, there are diverse forms of violence, gender-based violence. So sexual harassment in itself is a form of gender-based violence. But because that is what is so common in our system, that is why you always see us centering sexual harassment in the discussion. But if you even come to Ghana, for instance, in our law, the Criminal Code, the Criminal Offences Amendment Act, if you look at the also the Labor Act, and also other laws, you would notice that when it comes to violence, there are a range of things that come together. So there is assault, there is abuse, you know, there is rape, you know, there is defilement, there is battery, there is indecent assault, You know, there's actual battery. So there are a lot of things that come in. But when you talk about sexual harassment generally, there are two major types. And the first one is quid pro quo, which implies an offer. So someone will tell you that, give me sex in return for this. So people will make requests that are of sexual nature. So you are going to look for a job, you go for an interview, and they are telling you that, well, one of the panelists says that I am the one who calls the shots here. If you have one sex with me, I can let you pass. I mean, now people who are even going to drop their application letters, messengers are requesting for sexual favors, receptionists are requesting for sexual favors, managers are requesting, supervisors are requesting, you know. So even things that are rightly due you, people still want to have their way with you before they will help you to get it. And we have come to normalize certain things, in certain nasty sayings in our system, like use what you have to get what you want. So people, and also within this is the issue, some people will say that, but I didn't force her, she agreed to it. There is also coercive consent, that you know that this person is not comfortable with it, but you in a way force her to. You know, and then we also have hostile work environment, where you even go to the workplace and you hear people sexualizing and objectifying women's bodies. Tundra, because she has a big butt and then the hips. You know, somebody have big breasts and they are calling her Miss Lulu at the workplace. People resist such names, but people don't mind them because they think that it's normal, grown and needy. But you can't make people, you can't let them feel embarrassed over and over again. When there are people around and you go to washrooms and people are taming you around, people write certain things in the washroom. You go to the workplace, someone has left maybe a pornographic material. Your colleague sent you a WhatsApp message and it's nasty. Someone is sending you an email and they are using certain emojis they are not supposed to use and all of that. So it makes the workplace not safe and it's not healthy. You are forced to go to work because you need to get money. You know, and because you want to get money, the person knows that you definitely come to work and they will make your life very uncomfortable.
But Shiratu, you made an important point again here. The phrase, use what you have to get what you want. Again, the last time you were here, we got messages from many people pointing to this single factor, that in as much as many more men are recorded to have harassed women sexually, there is also the case where men have felt harassed by women who believe that they want something and the man is in a position to give them that thing, whether it's a job, whether it's some opportunity, employment, I mean, admission into a school or so, and so many other factors, that these women, knowing that they have things that the man would desire, flaunt these things at the man in order to get those opportunities. The last time we spoke about the excessive showing of cleavage, excessive showing of flesh in the workplace. Men sent messages and said, these things make us feel harassed as well. It isn't always that women are always the victims. Men sometimes are the victims as well.
Well, if you say men are harassed in the workplace like a woman pestering a man for sexual favor, that's a different discussion. But if you want
not just for sexual favor, to offer sex in order to get
for another favor,
yes.
Well, that's a different thing. And if you want to talk about dressing as an enabling factor, why a man will actually force a woman to have sex or anything, rape her. Don't let me even say have sex because it's rape if the person didn't give consent. It's a different thing. I'm not sure that if I leave my door, I'm sitting in the studio and I forgot, I leave my door and come here. That is not an invitation to treat for a thief to go into my house to steal. Is that simple? You know, because also let's note that it is not just women who wear miniskirts. I mean, there is no generalized discussion and acceptance of what is decent dressing. What might be decent for me might not be decent for someone. You know, but you see, the point is that it is not just women who wear maybe miniskirts or trousers who get raped or get assaulted or get harassed. Women who wear dresses like I wear and use hijab and the scarf, they are also harassed, they are also raped. Okay. Children 6 months are default.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me get this message from Samuel Yaboa. And I'm reading this at this time because I think it's relevant to an issue you just raised. Mumin, did I just hear Bashira to say that when you open your door, it is not an invitation for thieves to come in? Maybe perhaps she's right. But on the flip side, ask her for me. If I have a car and I haven't painted it into taxi colors, nobody will stop me. But once I paint that car yellow, people will stop me. If you wear some kinds of clothing, it's an indirect invitation for men to come after you.
That message right there
is
objectification of women. Women cannot be compared to an object. Women are not objects. It is that simple.
No, then you started the objectification.
No, I didn't start it.
You said door. You referred
to door. There is a difference there.
Then you said, let's talk about taxis.
No, you said, you see, he said, I paint my taxi for someone to come. The person stops me. Yes. I am using that in terms of the law. That doesn't stop me from going to the police station to report. And I'm not sure the police will tell me that because I didn't close my door, I don't have any right to come to the police station to report. Women, you see, women, even just someone can just see you and tell you that when you're what will I use to cover my mouth? You know, so it doesn't make any sense when people want to center the discussion around the way people dress. There are guys in our workplaces who wear clothes that shows their six packs. Right. They show their chest. They show their hairy spot. Why don't we go touching them anyhow?
Do you feel harassed by that?
Of course.
You do?
You don't know what turns me on, do you? You don't. For me, probably what turns me on is seeing a man in sandals.
Can we show some of the ladies out there? For those who just joined the conversation, we're having a discussion on sexual harassment as part of our 16 Days of Activism. And I have a studio participation from persons who have stories to share with us, but also a conversation with people who are experts in dealing with matters of sexual harassment, especially at workplaces, violence, especially at workplaces. Very soon, Shamima Muslim will join me on Zoom for us to ask a few questions about what their research in the media industry shows about harassment, especially against female media practitioners. Bashira Kamal is a gender and labor specialist. She's here with me in the studio. We will also soon be joined by Amto Ameya Ekumfi. She is the Women's Commissioner, University Students Association. So, Bashira, what are the specific cases that you can remember that have been reported to your office in respect of violence and sexual harassment?
Well, I mean, a host of cases. Some of the cases even leave you, the one who the case has been reported to, traumatized. Because one, you wear two caps. As someone who, in a way, will also have to provide some level of emotional support to victims and survivors. And also as someone who have to help them to get justice within the system. So there was a case that I recently conducted a research for industrial. And in Ghana, I was also looking for cases. And some of the cases that was reported, one lady said they were going for a staff labor. So on their way, like they were all from the canteen working. And then there is this gentleman who was behind her. And the gentleman just kept touching her brassiere. So he said the gentleman did it the first time and she was like, stop it. Then the gentleman smiled. Then they were moving again. He did it again. And then she turned and the gentleman gave her a wink. So the gentleman did it the third time and she slapped him. Are you mad? What sort of nonsense is this? You know? So, and then everyone was like, oh, what happened? Why then and she was like, you know. And then the people were like, oh, Papa Penyimu, they forgot totally about the nasty behavior of the person and rather focused on the reaction of the lady, which shouldn't have been, you know. So in that instance, that lady said she dealt with it in her own way, and the gentleman later apologized. But when they asked her to apologize to the gentleman, she refused and said that they should take the case anyway. She's ready for them to deal with it. Then there was another instance where a young lady was pregnant. Now she has delivered. She was pregnant, and then one of her colleagues met her. And immediately, in front of other people, went like, hey, me pe wa wan pinin se ade ewu nim ye. E na wa me anya wo ye yanka wo bewu ana nye na obi aye obi a wonyem no.
So it.
That is a sexist comment. So it's like, oh, so you actually know how to even have sex, and you refuse my advances. I mean, what would have been wrong if we had sex anyway? And the lady took offense. You don't define what sexual harassment or violence means to me. It is different from what the definition of the law is, you know. But then the point is that our socialization processes also influence what we accept or what we don't accept. You know, so me as a Muslim, there are things that I will not agree to, no matter what. So if I refuse to shake your hands, I do not want you to shake my hands. If I do not want you to touch my hair, don't touch my hair. You know, so we do not have a generalized thing to say that everybody should agree to A, B, or C. Then there was also another instance of a young lady who, you know, there is also an economic abuse, then the physical, and then there is a sex discrimination. So there is another, and there is sexual exploitation. So there's another case where someone who was a marketer in a bank, the boss will come, she said, like December, the boss will come and distribute complimentary cards. And then they will give the ladies complimentary cards of certain types of men. Then they will tell you, no matter what it takes, we need this person to come and save in this bank. Then the lady said in one of those, it ended up she was raped by that person, and she got pregnant in the process. And she couldn't have an abortion of that baby. So in the end, she had that baby. But right from the hospital, the mother had to take the baby away from her because she never wanted to have anything to that baby, because that baby brought bad memories to her as a person. Then the final one is someone who went for a promotional interview. Then in the course of the interview, there was someone who had actually been pestering her since she joined the organization 10 years ago. And the person met her in the hallway the following day and said, you never knew I'll become a manager of this company. Now I'm the manager, and you forgot what you did to me, refusing all my favors, and you went to marry that stupid guy and all of that. We will see if you make it true. So she went for the interview, and she said, one of the interviewers asked her, how many times have you gone on maternity leave since you joined the company? And she said, oh, this is my 15th year. I've gone on maternity leave 2 times. Then they said, so you've left post for 6 months. And this is something that the law gives to every woman. It's a right. It's not something, you are not doing me a favor if I go on maternity leave. So that was it, and she left. Then they gave the position to another gentleman who had joined the organization 5 years back.
Wow.
So there are a host of cases, including national service persons who will go to do national service, and people within organization will harass them sexually, will be pushing themselves on these girls, and then will be telling the girls that I will get you retained in the organization. Then that will be the end. After the national service, you can't do anything. So then, because even in this country, the systems are not there. You know, even if it is there, how to operationalize that system is also difficult. Then the final one I would say is this one. Someone shared with me that she had a scholarship. And then when she had the scholarship and she went, she was pursuing it. The one in charge told her that, hey, now scholarship, abroche, upesa ukopleni ube frono no. Yanko 1 weekend pay. You buy no, I will approve it for you on Monday. Wow. And she said she doesn't want it, if that is what is going to cost her, because she worked for the scholarship. So if she was given the scholarship based on her knowledge, skills, and competences, you know, and the fact that she qualified, why should you request sex from her? You, the one who is just supposed to sign for me to go, and you didn't do the approval. Wow. So there are a host of cases of these issues around the workplace.
Ni Okolai from East Legon says, good evening, very good show, good production. I'm loving this show. And I think that if there are any group of persons who should be interested in eradicating sexual harassment, especially at workplaces, it should be men. This is because men love their daughters and their sisters. Anytime you think about harassing somebody, just reverse the role and think that somebody else is doing so to your sister or your daughter. Pause and see how painful that thought is. That is how you will be hurting others when you sexually harass their sisters and their mothers. Oh, okay. I'm having a studio audience. They're excited about this. Thank you very much. I have been joined by Shamima Muslim. Shamima is the convener of the Alliance for Women in Media Africa. Shamima, many thanks for accepting to speak with us here on Moment tonight.
Right. Good evening, Abdul, and thank you very much for having me as well.
Shamima, so I know that your group, you've been involved in conducting some research about the experiences of women in media, especially in respect of sexual...
I don't know if there's a lot of noise. I can't hear you speak. I can only hear the production voices.
Okay, so what we'll do is... Yes, production will sort that out, and then we'll get Shamima back on the line. So let's work on that line and make sure Shamima is on so we can get her. But we also have some persons with us in the studio. Can we show the ladies in the studio? Let our viewers see them so we know why they are here. These are all members of the group known as Young Urban Women Empowerment. I'll turn my attention to them even as we prepare to get Shamima on the line. Martina Odoi is a member of the Young Urban Women Empowerment. She's seated right there in the middle somewhere. Martina, so you have a microphone to your... Yes, so you can pick up that microphone and speak into it so we can hear you. First of all, you have come in a group. This group, Young Urban Women Empowerment. Tell me about it very briefly.
Thank you, Moman. So it's Young Urban Women's Movement,
yes,
not empowerment. Thank you. So we are a coalition of young women between the ages of 15 and 35 in 5 regions in Ghana. We are about 6,500, and we work around burden of care. That's what Ghanaians will call unpaid care work. That is household chores that we don't think takes up our time, and bodily integrity, where issues like sexual harassment falls under, and then economic security, where we want every young woman to have decent work that pays at least the average wage. So we started off as a project by Action Aid about 6 years ago. We had 2 phases of the project, and after we decided to be a movement so we can continue the good work in our communities of work. So
great.
That is who we are. That is some of
a round
us.
of applause. Good job there. Unpaid care work, bodily security.
Bodily integrity.
Bodily integrity. Whoa.
And economic security.
Economic security. But, so, tell me, why are you here?
Okay, so we are doing the 16 Days of Activism that we do every year. And your show is just one of the many shows we have been going on since the 25th of November. So we are here to share some of our stories as survivors or victims of sexual harassment, and also extend our wings that any young lady who wants to join the movement is welcome.
So, you know, when we put it out there again that we're going to engage some of you, the first question I got from people, even my production team, even my director, Joe Pete, right now, Joe Pete went like, are they willing to show their faces on TV? Are you willing to show your face on TV? Your face is already on TV.
Yes.
You want to...
So I get that. I get that question a lot. But I can say today that, yes, I'm willing to show my face because it's been too long. And this happened years back. And I now have the courage to share my story so people can learn from it, so it can touch lives. So I can say that today, yes, I'm ready.
Share your story with us.
Okay, so I was working in a bank back in the days, and I'm mentioning the form of work, so you know how tiring you have to, the early mornings and the late nights. And my immediate boss, that was the branch manager at that time, was having the advances towards me. And maybe I'm lucky to say that at that time I knew what it was because of the Action Aid project and other NGOs that used to be in my urban area at that time. So I knew what he was doing. So I told him point blank that I was not interested. And then he started giving me queries for something I have done years back that I didn't get a query for. He started giving me queries. I stay at Nsawam. The work was in town. And even sometimes we have to show up before 8:30. That's the opening time. And I have come at 8 before and never got a query. But now when I come at 8, I get a query. I'm always a story at HR. So I told my immediate, our OTL, which was a woman, I told her about what was going on. And she didn't show enough concern. She didn't care. I don't know if it's because she didn't believe me, but she didn't show enough concern that like I wanted. And my colleagues, my staff colleagues were also telling me to let it slide. It was not anything serious. I mean, a man is like Beman Epel Bar, something like that. And it was getting tiring for me because it was not my first harassment issue that I was getting. So it was very tiring mentally, especially with how he was doing his advances. And back in the days, only two can eat in the kitchen at a time. And he always makes sure that when I am going to the kitchen, that's when he's also coming. So the both of us can be there. And like you can't even eat. And in the washroom back in the day was quite uncomfortable in the sense that we have the male and the female, but both of them have just one sink to wash their hands in the hallway to the washroom. So there was one time that I was washing my hand and trying to zip up. I was wearing the braces kind of thing, so I was trying to zip up, and he grabs me from behind. He grabs my breast from behind, and I exclaimed, and that's when I slapped him. That's when everything started going haywire. He didn't take it lightly. My OTL too didn't take it lightly. That I didn't, like, there's no camera to show exactly what happened, and he was trying to say that I was being disrespectful, and he rather started to give me the threats like he's going to fire me. And I know that you didn't employ me. I was employed from HR, and I was posted here. So I knew my rights, so I went straight to the HR to report, which was another woman, and told me that they needed evidence before they can push the issue to their level. And that was even worse because they needed evidence. Is like, so me going back to be who I was for him so I can get enough evidence to gather to make a case. So I now have to allow his late night calls, his naughty messages, his bad snacks at the office, his sexist comments with "you have a nice body." He actually one day he said he always imagines my backside and wants that style, that sex style. Like he always imagines my backside in the doggy style.
Okay, so you said it. Yes.
He said it.
Right.
And it was so stressful, especially because most of my colleagues were female, and then they were not trying to understand. And then, so Action Aid actually helped me. Our program manager, project manager at that time, Ms. Naya Lekujo, was the one who spearheaded that. And then we took the evidence back to HR, and then the issue was everywhere. Everybody at that bank knew my name. Those who didn't know me those who had our feeling respected me, and those who didn't know started fearing me that, hey, wait there, what do I say, hey, wait there, Holy Mama Jesus, stuff like that. And then they made us feel like I thought they had fired him, because that is what the proceedings or however it ended at the HR, and I have not seen him for a while, and there was a new branch manager. Moving forward, after some time, we were on our field tell-arounds, and I saw him at a different branch, which was not even far from our branch. It was just like 2 towns from our branch. And I asked the tellers there is that their branch manager? They said yes. I asked of how many months, and it was just equating to the number of months that he left our branch. So I asked myself, and I actually went to ask the HR that why didn't they just say that they are moving him? Because like you're just moving him from one woman who was likely to be empowered to another one who might not be empowered, who might not speak up, who might just go through.
Martina, in your narration, the first woman you your experience too, did not believe you. When the evidence came out, did she then believe you? Did she comfort you in any way? Did she support you?
So with Atipal, even till today, I'm still in touch with that woman. And she always used to apologize to me and said that she didn't have the power in her hands and she didn't want people to say women are ganging up, women empowerment, because I think she also didn't believe that I would take it that far. She just hoped that I would just sweep it under the rug and find a way to deal with it. So yes, after she believed me, she apologized to me on countless occasions. Again,
there are occasions where, for example, I hadn't ever met you until this evening. I came in, you girls were seated, looking all lively. We shared a few hacks here and there. We even shared some jokes. I played somehow with Bashira too here. As a man, I was being friendly. Did you feel at any point that you were being harassed by me? No, I just want to know at what point we crossed the lines.
Yeah, I understand. So when my boss started to, I took it as a joke because unlike how you did, oh hi, oh fine, oh I want to harass you, that is normal. But when it moves to, hey, are you wearing Anita? You know, bra, they have the bra they call Anita, like your boobs are pecky. Why are you wearing Anita? Like it's awkward. Then like Auntie Bash was saying, you can just be standing there and then I don't know why they like doing that. You just do this and they go. But it's awkward. So those things and then grabbing your ass and saying, oh yes, like it's awkward. So those ones I don't think it's friendly.
Sorry, that one got me. I wasn't expecting that. People do that?
Oh yes, people do.
Yes.
They actually tell you it's not grown yet.
Yes.
Oh yes.
You do that to my daughter, I'll kill you. I mean, literally, I mean. But this is a very serious matter we're talking about. So I'll return to you shortly, Martina. But so this is workplace.
Yes.
And she's narrated exactly some of her experiences. We're hoping to get Shamima back on the line, and I'm very interested in speaking to Shamima because in my newsroom there are a host of young women who hope to hear from her and the angle that she is coming from, where women in media have been harassed even when they are on assignment outside of the newsroom and so on. Shamima has some of those details she'll be sharing with us. We just hope that we are able to deal with the technical issue and then we'll get her on. But so this story definitely is just one out of perhaps a million others.
You know, according to a World Bank report in 2019, 1 in 3 women have been abused. Whether it's IPV, that is intimate partner violence or whatever, 1 in 3 women. I'm pretty much sure if you bring it to the workplace, it will tend to 2 in 3 women. Because the workplace is a place where there's a lot of power relations from all angles, depending on where you fall. And from what she said, I think that, and going back to your narration about when we came in, it's also the issue about consent. You know, when you are hugging someone and the person doesn't want you to, you would see it, you will feel it. You will look at the gesture and the face of the person and you will notice that no, the person is not comfortable. And all the acts that we are talking, especially sexual harassment, is uncomfortable, it's unwanted, and it's importunate. So if a person does not even say no, you would know from a certain behavior that this person is not comfortable with whatever it is that I am doing. And unfortunately, in the workplaces, we do not have enough support systems. So even if after the case was dealt with, I'm not sure they provided any form of emotional support to her again. That was the end of it. But it goes beyond just the issue. And this issue has no expiring date. One, people live with the trauma for the rest of their lives. The best you can do is to provide some level of emotional support or psychological support that minimizes the trauma. And they are able to talk about it so that they get it out of their system and it doesn't rule their lives. You know, that is the level we can go. Unfortunately, in Ghana, for instance, in the Labor Act, in Section 175, it only defines what sexual harassment is. Finished. So it doesn't even talk about the processes and the procedure, complaint mechanism. It doesn't talk about it. And then if you go to where there is unfair labor practices, for instance, it also says there that if a person has repeatedly reported cases of maybe harassment or any case against the employer and the person's appointment is terminated, it can be deemed to be unfair labor practice. And then maybe the criminal code talks about assault, indecent assault and the likes, and then the Amendment Act talks about sexual exploitation. But we do not really have laid down procedures for people to follow when it happens to them. We do not have, DOPSU doesn't deal with this. DOPSU deals with domestic violence. Even though when you take such cases, they will still help you and support you. But their mandate is strictly with domestic violence issue. Right. So what happens is, one, some private employers will go the extra mile themselves by putting in their own policies and having committees in place and doing a lot of education and sensitization and making sure that the systems are there for people to report cases to somebody. Some level of anonymity guaranteed, confidentiality is there. The person who is reporting is protected. Whistleblowers are also protected. But the truth is that these are mostly available in multinational corporations.
All right. You know, I asked a question about where to draw the line, because I've been having conversations here bordering on several issues, and one thing that's clear is that our culture, perhaps unfortunately so, does allow for the use of certain expressions that make different groups of people feel uncomfortable at different times. And so where you have a person living with some disability, the person cannot walk, in our communities, they will tell you that's the cripple's house, for example. And it's unfortunate that the blind man's son, you are described by your inability, or your physical disability, and so on. And we have normalized things like that.
So I was going to say it's not our culture. We have normalized that behavior.
No, really?
Yes. It's not. Where in our culture does it say that you should describe people with how they look?
But I'm sure you go to my hometown, and people even have surnames based on their disability.
Well, that is not correct. We have normalized that attitude and behavior. But I'm not sure our culture promotes such indecency. For you to call me the woman with the big head, that is the woman with the big head's daughter. Which culture will promote things like this?
Okay,
even
so
though our culture does promote certain things.
The woman with the big breasts. That's the woman.
Yes.
Yeah, the woman with the big butts.
You see, there are a lot of things that you can actually use. It's like asking someone for direction and the person starts with far left, far right. Udu kokora newa. If the kokora doesn't come, you're on your own. You know, but the truth of the matter is that we have normalized, should I say quote, nonsense. Okay. No, that's the truth.
So, you know, Rahmat Boamabache, she says, when you get physical, in terms of the barriers, she says, when you get physical, when your comments are uncomfortable, when she says, I don't like your advances, when she says, I don't want what you are doing, that's when you know she is not in for your friendliness. According to the Akan culture, we are told not to share ubi ase, meaning do not use origins and disabilities to describe people. Okay, thank you very much, Rahmat. So what I'll do, let's begin to wrap up now. But I am certainly, we next week certainly will have to come back here to do a part 2 of this discussion. We cannot end this discussion within an hour. Are you coming next week?
If you invite us.
I'm inviting all of you. Are you coming next week? We have to continue with this discussion. It cannot be done within 60 minutes. So, yeah, do I have a commitment? Martina and Co, thank you very much. No, so let's begin to wind down now. So, Martina, how did you get through the trauma?
Okay, so my friends, my family, and then me as an empowered young person, in a sense that I knew what it was, so I knew that it was not my fault. I knew that what had to be done has been done, but it took a while because we've been doing this activism for over 4 or 5 years, but I have never shared my story because I wanted to heal from it first, because our society doesn't allow you to be a victim. Everybody is either you are lying, they don't have evidence, they are stigmatizing against you, they're making you feel like you just want to degrade someone's work or something. So I want to say that it's my friends and our movement and my family that has helped me go through the trauma. I'm not sure it's 100% yet, because when I started sharing the story, I cried, but today I haven't. So I know that I'm still going. I'm not 100% yet, but I'm thankful for the growth so far.
Tell me about stigmatization as well. Usually when people tell stories, like you said, even your friends will tend to describe you with all sort of words, too known and so on.
Yeah,
Tell me about your experience.
So it started from the bank. I think after I complained about my bosses being gone and my staff was not stopping, they actually moved me from my branch to a different branch, from Circle to Dansoman, because my colleagues started stigmatizing against me, calling me all sorts of names and not letting me be. So that is where the stigma started from. And then even when I started sharing it this year, I started sharing on my status on WhatsApp as well and my social media handles. I get questions like, are you sure you didn't enjoy it? Are you sure you didn't want it? You should have allowed it, like you get a sugar daddy. Are you sure you're not lying? So the stigma is still there, even from my personal WhatsApp status, because I still post there. People ask you, are you sure you didn't like it? Hey, come on. So the stigma is still not over. But the fact that I know that we will get somewhere with telling the story, but at least I still got people to also share their stories to me through me opening up. And right now I have what I call the sugar circle. I have at least 15 girls in my DM that we are trying to find help for. And most of them don't want to take it to the law level, but they just want to heal as humans and try and move on with other people because they claim it's affecting their intimate relationships with their partners. So yeah, stigma, it's not good.
I'm going to ask Joe Pete to give us a little extension of time so we can wrap up in a way that our viewers will understand and be able to put the pieces together. But again, do you ever feel that having come out to speak publicly, especially against someone who was your superior at the workplace, that exposure, that revelation may have denied you access to some other opportunities for men who think...
Yes, please. I don't think I know. My next branch I was sent to the Dansoman Russia branch. My boss was a man. He never had a one-on-one interaction with me. He always passed my assignment through the OTL. He said it point blank that on pen and wasem. So even that alone made me know that we humans don't like the truth. And we shy away from it to be the perfect person for someone or for some people. And maybe because I didn't do that, I might not have gotten one or two opportunities. Right. And myself, before I came out, I didn't want to from the beginning because of all these things. Okay. But Miss Naya Lekujo was my... Right. Thank you.
Shamima Muslim has joined us on the phone. Shamima, thanks very much, and we do apologize for the technical hitch there. But I just want you to tell us briefly the experiences of women in media relative to sexual harassment. What are the stories you've been hearing?
Right. So thank you very much, Abdul. A lot of the stories we used to hear were by word of mouth, which is one of the reasons why we decided to conduct the national survey to come up with the status of women in media. Of course, as expected, we did find out that a lot of harassment happens in newsrooms. What we realized very early on is that there's a knowledge gap regarding the understanding of what harassing behavior is. And Batch has done a good job of listing out all the rafts of behaviors that will constitute harassing behaviors. the watchword always is, it's unwelcome and it's offensive. Because that's the way that all the institutions have to make meaning of it. Once the behavior is unwelcome, unsolicited, offensive to the person, then it is harassing behavior. So for our work, we ask questions about whether or not you had experienced inappropriate physical contact. At least 23% said yes within the newsroom setting. Offensive comments about your appearance, 23% said yes. Suggestive and flirtatious looks, 16% said yes. And we also found out that harassment thrives in a climate. There's a certain culture within the history of newsrooms which is very macho. So that culture has created a certain climate which normalizes some things. So although we recognize so many things that constitute harassing behaviors, they have become normalized within the workplace setting. So an individual who wants to protest this thing is seen as difficult. So the first intervention area is bridging the knowledge gap. When you let people become aware that in fact, this thing that you tolerate is harassment behavior, but you tolerate it because it is part of a climate. But that climate leads to some consequences for the individual, for the workplace, and for the bottom line in the society. The individual Bas has spoken about it. For the organization, you can go into crisis. If an issue regarding a big boss breaks who is harassing young people, it can affect the image of the business, the bottom line even, and what we call the affective commitment towards that organization. So it is important that we begin to look at the interventions. So we have come out with a book, a sexual harassment guide for media in Ghana to at least deal with the knowledge gap and capacity issues. Many organizations we found do not have a sexual harassment policy, have never ever organized a training program for their staff about harassment, or educated staff members about avenues for redress. There is no standing committee of individuals who have integrity within the organization to respond to harassment issues. And the fact that when you even do reports, the action that the organization takes disincentivizes a lot of people for wanting to pursue the matter further.
Shamima, you know what? We have actually run out of time now, but the interest in this conversation is such that we have to continue sometime next week, and we do hope that at that time you will be able to join us in the studio so we can delve a lot more into these issues. We'd like to thank you so much for your input so far, but certainly next week you have to join us so we can have a lot more from you. Do you promise us?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shamima. That was Shamima Muslim. She's the convener of the Alliance for Women in Media Africa. We've been joined by Amtu Amiya Ekumfi, who will wrap up the show for us. How are you doing? Glad to see you. So you came in late. We feel very harassed by your lateness.
Sincere apologies. I had to attend to some other family engagements. My father didn't even believe that the show was still ongoing. He said that it was a little too late because we're too late, like coming. Well,
we have a director who has been magnanimous enough to give us 5 more minutes.
Thank you
yes.
much.
So quickly, when it comes to sexual harassment of women, especially in schools, on campuses, how bad is it?
So, like Sister Shamima rightly said, it thrives in a certain climate where the person being harassed doesn't even know that they are being harassed. The person harassing does not also know that what they are doing is harassment. So I can say that even with research, so we had a virtual program where Sejensa said that somewhere 2013, 14, thereabout, there was a survey in 19 tertiary institutions, and they recognized about 13%. So this comes from the people that have been able to complain, who have made like complaints to counseling departments and avenues that exist in their institutions. But I think, should I say, from the student perspective, the little gossips that you hear, you know it exists. It's more than the 13% that administration has access to. We have examples of sex for grades, BBC reported on it, and I think we are making some strides, because personally I've taken some stands to engage Ministry of Education on it. I've engaged Gender Committee, Parliament, and as it were, government is making some efforts, in as much as Nigeria has taken the lead, because now they have a policy on sexual harassment, and Ghana is far behind. But speaking to the Gender Committee chairperson, she said that Parliament is putting some measures in place where parliamentarians on the committee are understanding the Nigerian policy that exists, so that they can directly do it for us, and then they can reflect our interest. I mean, I'm speaking from the kind of information that I receive. So, and as it stands, not even all the universities have a policy on sexual harassment. University of Ghana has one, KNUST has one. The other institutions really do not have. UCC doesn't have, but Sejansa director says that they have some activities that, as it's where you can say that the school is making efforts to make sure that if you have the strength to complain, you have some redress. And Sejansa also says that they believe that the reason why students or the public feels that nothing is happening is because they do not do name and shame. So because they believe that some people might harass whoever the lecturer is. That's if you manage to do it privately. They'll just take away the lecturer privately, and then it's not going to be like those that are going to come
because
in
the integrity of the larger institution. I
believe that's
and all that. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But what we are going to do, and you must be here early next week.
No, I'm going to be here early next week. I'm going to be here.
So I'll give you the last word.
Yes,
you were going to talk about ILO issues. Very briefly.
So we've been on government since 2019, that the International Labour Organization adopted a new convention, which is Convention 190, which is on eliminating violence and harassment in the workplace. So it will only work if our parliament ratifies it. That is why I was laughing when you said they are understudying in Nigeria, because we have done so much work in Ghana for them to know that it is time. And we have all the resources at our disposal. They don't need to study Nigeria to get a national legislation.
Come and tell us that next week.
So we are saying that government of Ghana through parliament should ratify ILO Convention 190, because the convention extends protection to everybody, national service, trainees, apprentices, and everybody. And it also recognizes that if violence happens or harassment happens in the bus that is bringing you to work, it can also be valid. You can take it on. So it does no discrimination.
Thank you very much.
Well.
And one message here, Dr. Anda of the University for Professional Studies, Accra, says, "Hi there, I'm enjoying your show tonight. Workplace sexual harassment is so rife." Thank you very much. A lot of you send in messages, but also confirming some of your own stories relative to sexual harassment. Definitely, we'll be back here next week, God willing, to continue with this very discussion. We acknowledge you from Young Urban Women Movement. Please, we are very grateful that you joined us. But please, again, I am very proud of you, Martina. Let's give Martina a huge round of applause. You are bold. The story you have told. Yes, Martina is using, I mean, you are not just telling a story, but you're also making an impact, because through you, other people will be emboldened to tell their stories, and that will help to end this menace of sexual harassment. We're very proud of you, Martina. Thank you so very much. Bashira Kamal is gender and labor specialist. She doesn't deserve an applause. Shamima Muslim did join us on phone. Alliance for Women in Media Africa. She is the convener. who harassed us by coming late, is the Women's Commissioner of the University Students Association, and Martina Odoi, of course, a member, Young Urban Women Movement, did speak to us as well. They have made, signed a pact with us that they'll be here next week, so we delve a lot more into the issues. We are grateful that you made time to be here with us. And thank you to Joe Pete, who allowed us some extra time. We'll see you next week with another edition of this particular program. But tomorrow, we'll be back here with other issues here on Moment Tonight. Have a very good night. Bye-bye. Moment Tonight. By some of your appointments,